Okay, let's have a seat. We want to start on time. And this is Bo and Alexis Noonan. They've been married 26 years, have 3 kids. They know all the mistakes that you make when you're parenting, because everybody does. And no, it's actually a real honor to have these guys here. They have 3 boys, and one of them has left home, I think. In a good way. Yeah, in a good way. I mean, we actually are supposed to raise our kids to leave home, and because if we're still living in the basement at 30, it's not good. But no, I really expect to draw some nuggets from this. I've known these guys for most of that 26 years, and seen them live in the Northeast and then go through Trilogy, and we parachuted them into Tacoma, and they built a really strong church. So let's welcome Bo.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Good afternoon. Did everyone get some food? Yeah. This is not sleepy time. I need you guys to be awake and looking at us. So, like Carl said, we've been married 26 years, and we have 3 sons. So I am definitely a boy mom. Yes. Our sons are 20, 17, and 14. And you need to pray for us because the 17 and the 14 are home alone for the first time while we're here. Yeah, in Tacoma, Washington.
And that's how you lead your household.
Yeah. Exactly. Leave your household. We live in Tacoma, Washington. We've been there almost 20 years. So our oldest was 9 months old when we moved. Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. We hope that this is helpful for you all. We're going to talk some about marriage, but a lot about parenting, and I don't know which category you all find yourselves in stages of life, but then at the end, we'll open up for some Q&A. So if we miss something that you were hoping we'd address, we'll do our best to answer that question. And I think, the conference is built around this theme of multiplying leaders, and leading a home. It requires leadership, and it requires, when you talk about leadership, there's 2 things that are required no matter what you're leading. One is courage, and you always need courage to lead. And we've found that we've almost always are swimming against the tide in terms of leading our household and raising our kids, and even the way we protect our marriage. That it just feels like we're swimming against the current, and it takes courage to carry on and to not just fold into what the world's doing and the culture's doing. And it takes courage. And then number 2, it takes vision. And every leader needs to have a vision. It needs to know where they're going, and you need to have a vision for your household. And that's been a big deal for us as we've been raising kids and married. When we met in college at a student ministry, and we were both attracted to the fact that we kind of had this reckless abandon, like we'll go anywhere, we'll do anything. We just want to share the gospel with people, and so there was a vision kind of built into our relationship right off the bat, which was like we'll go wherever Jesus tells us to go, and that's taken us to a lot of different places. And so we were married for a year in New Hampshire and helped with the church there, and then we moved to England for a year. We did basically like an internship, like a gap year in England for a year together, and we were the only married couple in that gap year, so we were like the grandparents in that whole thing. And then when we moved back from there, we moved to Boston to help start a church, and we were in Boston for 5 years and did some training with Confluence, and just had a real formative shaping time there. But again, that all kind of fit into our vision. Like the vision wasn't a specific city or a specific town. The vision was follow Jesus wherever he's leading us. And so then from there, we moved to Tacoma in 2006. And so it's kind of shaped our vision and then shaped the way we've raised our kids, is that we wanted to have a vision for them to love Jesus more than anything else in the world. And so we've said things to like when they go to school, we say, you're going to school to get prepared for whatever God's going to call you to. And it's better to to go ahead and get good grades so that, if he calls you to something big, you'll be ready for it and you don't have to backtrack. And so it just fits into everything that we're doing as a family, is just to have a vision for your family and to state that vision and to live that vision and to call your family to that vision. And so that's been a big deal for us. And we don't want to skip a step when it comes to biblical leadership. It's different from worldly leadership. In the Bible, it says you need to be able to lead yourself, and then you need to be able to lead your household, and then you can lead in the household of God. And so we've got to take that seriously, that we want to lead ourselves really well. And I so appreciated that moment with Willie today of just saying like, hey, like, search my heart, Lord. Am I leading myself well? And then the household, we can't skip that step. And that's a disaster to have a household that's out of order, but then leading in the church. And so again, I want to encourage you to have a vision for your household, take care of your household, and lead in the church from there. So that's the biblical model. We don't want to skip a step on that. And so you want to talk about marriage a little bit?
Our marriage? Bo is the head of the household.
Thanks for coming.
I even think this can be controversial to talk about sometimes in the church, but being lovingly led by the head of the household. You can speak to like big opinions and
I think, by the way, just like the language of head of the household in Ephesians, that language isn't just like the physical head of a body, but it's the source of something. Like it could be the head of the river. Mm-hmm. And that idea, like my role in the family is to be kind of this, like the leader of the source of where we're going with spiritual vitality. Like where's our family going and where are we heading? Like that begins and ends with me, and the buck stops with me on those things in the house. And one of the things that I learned early is to have big opinions about big things and small opinions about small things. So this is for the husbands here. Like big opinion about faith in the household, big opinion about church, what you're doing and how you're loving and serving your neighbors, big opinion about that stuff, small opinion about where we're going for dinner that night. Like it gets a little heavy-handed when you have big opinions about everything in the house. And so learning to know, like, what are the things I'm willing to fight for and put the stake in the ground on? One is my household, like Joshua, we will serve the Lord. That's what we're doing. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is where this household's going. But, you wanted to paint the wall green? Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to fight over that. I'm not going to demand that. And so I think that's been helpful for us in terms of just maintaining the health of our relationship, is big opinions about big things, small opinions about small things.
Yeah, it creates an umbrella that I can flourish under. So there's a verse from Deuteronomy that I'll read. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And I think we have found so much joy in just in our normal rhythms of life with our children, asking them questions and talking to them about the real life things that they're doing, what's happening with their friends, and being able to infuse biblical wisdom into those conversations so that it just feels really natural and normal. And I feel like God gives you organic ways to speak to your children in their everyday activities, if you're carving out time to really do that and listen. So having Bo be the head of the household and our kids know that's what's happening, and then I come in and the day-to-day things, I spend so much time with our children as they're going, as we're in the car together, bringing their friends along with us, having real curiosity about what's happening in their lives.
Yeah, and with that and that verse in Deuteronomy, just those are the moments to talk about the God stuff. Those are the moments to impart values and address. Mm-hmm. So we come from totally different families of origin. So if you've ever done any family of origin work, like my family was very stuffed emotionally. We're Irish. I shook hands with my wife, or my wife. We did have 3 kids, but I shook hands with my aunts. Just very kind of cold and stuffed. And we didn't talk about L, and we didn't talk about G, and we didn't talk about B, and we didn't talk about T, and certainly didn't talk about plus. And so like everything was just kind of off limits. And Alexis's family was much more outgoing and talked about a lot of things. And as the gospel kind of came into both of our lives, she's been such a huge help to our family with the kids, because she'll talk about anything with the kids, and I'm kind of like, oh, you can't talk about that. But addressing cultural things in the moment, the culture is going to give you a ton of material to deal with and to apply the gospel to. And so like for her, she's jumping in talking about relationships, and this is what teenage dating looks like, and this is what this looks like. And so it's been really great. And she does that on the fly. Like it's car rides, it's shopping. We do try to have meaningful dinner times together. And then one of the things that we try to do when the kids were younger is we would do like a family meeting, on a regular basis, where we would call a family meeting, make it a fun time. Maybe that was a dessert, something, fun to do. And then we would just envision them for who we were as a family, and envision our boys for being brothers together, and envision, and then sometimes address like, hey, my kids went to public school in Tacoma, Washington, and so they came across everything. And our oldest son, he had, a two-dad family that he was friends with the kid, and all the things. And so we're like, oh, let's talk about that, And Alexis was so great and a catalyst for that for me, because I was like, let's not talk about that. Like, probably should transfer schools, just call it good. They don't need to go to school, actually.
I think starting early and having humor, it doesn't have to be super serious and scary. I think enjoying your children, having winsome conversations. I remember being in the van with my sons, and they're all going through puberty, and their friends are in the back saying, where are we going to get hair next? On our knuckles? There's just so much that... humor helps a lot. And I think when you start young, and nothing is off limits for them either, it's kind of a two-way thing. And I think your children know when you're enjoying them. They can sense when you're having real connection and enjoying them. And I think it starts from small. Yeah. So we're, in the later years with our boys. And I think when you pave the way when they're young, it's so much easier to talk about the high stakes things when they're older. Feels heavier when they're older.
Yeah, and I think the reality, and we know this in church leadership as well, that transferring information isn't transformational. Yeah. And so you want to get to the heart, and the heart, I always thought it was a trick. Like my kids start talking at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, this is a trick. You're supposed to be going to bed right now, but those are moments to get to their heart. And so making sure that we're not just transactional in our information giving to them. We want to see transformation in them, and that means we got to get to their heart. So the question is then, what kind of kingdom culture is in your household? Yeah. How are you doing? How would you rate encouragement in your house? Is there a high level of encouragement in your house? What about correction and a call to obedience, which is a kingdom value? How is that going in your house? And then how are we doing with apologizing and forgiving one another? What do those kingdom values look like outworked in your house? And it's important that we have these kingdom values on display.
Yeah, and I think I didn't come from a family that apologized ever. And there was not for a lot of forgiveness offered. And I think coming to know Jesus and wanting to have something different in our household, our kids are so forgiving of us, it's almost embarrassing. And it's taught me so much about apologizing, being quick to apologize to them, because they're so quick to want to forgive you. It's kind of changed me from not having grown up in a culture like that or grown up around Jesus. And so I think it can feel scary to let your kids see that you've made mistakes or that you're not perfect, but they're so willing to want to forgive you. Mm-hmm. It's been a lesson.
Yeah. And I think when the call to discipline your kids and call them to obedience, they need to know that the one calling them to that, mom or dad, is not righteous on their own. That we're not saying we're righteous, so you should be righteous. That's the only thing, that's what God says. Mm-hmm. Be holy as I'm holy. And we're not saying that. We're saying we've made these mistakes too. Mm-hmm. We struggle with this, but we're going to call you to obedience. And so it's important just to be honest. And again, that creates a kingdom culture of grace. Again, we heard that today from Willie, just the culture of grace in your household, to be able to make a mistake and to be forgiven. And, when we were scrambling because we moved to Tacoma. We were scrambling to find out, like, how do we raise kids? Like, we had this little one in tow. And so we listened to a lot of things and read a lot of books. And I think one of the things that came up was, like, is your household a safe place to make mistakes? Because if it's not a safe place to make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes outside your household that can have a higher level of consequence. Yeah. And so we're just wanting to create that environment in your house where it's not that you overlook mistakes, you call them to obedience, but then you love them and you show them grace and forgive them.
I think you can also age appropriately share how God is helping you, like where you've made mistakes, where you've had to repent, reconciliation with friends appropriately. But I think it's helpful for them to see you as real people at certain ages, appropriately. Mm-hmm. And I think it opens the door for them to feel safe to be like, oh, mom's talked about that or dad's talked about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing as we just kind of move along in that idea of like addressing cultural issues, try to address them in the moment if you can. Try to engage your kids in what we just saw. Like what just happened in front of you, like the question that they brought home from school, like trying to address that in the moment, and then ask good questions. Because again, asking questions draws their heart out, and you're going for that transformation of their heart. So it's not like, hey, here, read this pamphlet on this topic, but this is like, let's talk about this, and what do you think about that? And is there anything in the Bible that kind of you think about in your head in terms of how God would think about that? And just to get them to think a little bit more biblically about these situations. But again, the culture is going to give you endless material on addressing, like, what does it look like to live as followers of Jesus in a broken world? You will have endless material for that. We live in a city with a lot of homelessness and a lot of drug use and a lot of mental illness. A lot of just progressive ways of thinking and all those things. And so it's just a nonstop, like driving to school with the kids, like, oh, let's address that. Let's address that. So
I think what we've also seen too is that our children talk to their friends and all of a sudden you become a safe person for their friends because they may not have Jesus in their household and they may not have parents that are engaging their hearts. And so all of a sudden you're having kids to the house that also feel like you become a trusted person for them. And so it kind of spreads out from there, which is really beautiful. And we've had kids around our table and in the car, and I think that is...
Yeah. We literally live across the street from a middle school, and I came home one day from work, and Alexis had like 5 middle school girls in the living room. And I was like, what happened to my house? Like, this is a boy house. And she was just chatting them up on what's going on at school. What do you see? What do you hear? And what's going on? And these weren't Christian girls at all.
No.
But they were having
They're Jackson's friends.
Yeah, they were having a safe
they were
conversation.
Spilling the tea.
Yeah.
They know I was listening.
Yeah. I think and along those lines, there's this cultural narrative around this generational war, like, teenagers hate adults, and, that's an age-old thing. And I think we just have to push through that as Christians, that we have to see, generations as coming together. Being multi-generational is a beautiful thing, and there's wisdom in that. And so trying to help your kids through that too. And we see that, like, sometimes we'll interact with our kids' friends, and they just don't know how to interact with adults at all. And they don't want to talk to me. They don't want to look me in the eye. They're just kind of like, oh, why would I ever talk to you? And so we've worked hard at that and we did a lot of role playing when they were little kids. And then we would, like, if we went to a restaurant, we would say, okay, the waiter's going to come. They're going to ask you what you want to eat. You're going to say, oh, may I please have this? And you have to look them in the eye when you do that. And almost every time the waiter would be like, oh, we don't have to do this. Like, they're like, I don't want to look your kid in the eye. And I'm like, hey, this isn't about you. This is about my kid right now. Yeah. So, and we're teaching them to interact with adults because it's a good thing to do. And so I think we want to break down those generational walls.
I also think it's a lie. I think teenagers want to be engaged. They really do. They want to have your attention. They want to be listened to. I think it's just a scheme of the enemy, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lie that our teenage kids will always be rebellious and won't enjoy being around their parents. It's not true. Yeah. So I think kids who feel securely attached, loved, heard, I think that they still enjoy being around their parents. So we've had to push through super awkward moments with their friends, but I think it's really worth it. Yeah. We have to feel uncomfortable and awkward and be okay with it.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be cool. We just want them to know that
we're not.
We're available. Yeah.
We're not. And I think that again, the other lie, the lie that there's a generational war. I think there's another, this lie in our culture right now where no one wants to be under authority. And we've had to work really hard at that because, again, that's not modeled in the culture for our kids. And so when their friends are like, I hate this teacher and Mrs. So blah, 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 or this coach, I hate this coach. And we've had to work really hard to say, that's not how we talk about authority. You might disagree with the teacher. You might disagree with the coach. You might disagree with another adult in your life. But we respect and honor that authority. And then that means that we've had to model that. And so for me, being on an eldership team at our church, we have 8 elders, and my kids know that I'm submitted to the eldership team, and and they're submitted to me, and we're back in that whole mutual submission thing. But they know, and I learned this from Tim Chambers actually, that if my kids have an issue with me and they feel like I'm not responding to them well, that they can go to the eldership team. And they can skip, and they can go to West Swarthout, and they can go to and they can just go right to them and say, "Hey, my dad is unreasonable right now," and so that they need to know that we're not asking them to do something we're not willing to do, and so we're submitted and live a life of that, and we have to work on that. That I can't come home and be trashing my eldership team and trashing people I work with and model that for my kids. It has to be model that we are, there's a loving submission that happens to authority, and ultimately God is the ultimate authority, and we lovingly submit to Him and know that that's for our good and for His glory, and so we want to practice that. Let me read you some more verses from the Bible. Psalm 128, 1-4 says, "Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in His ways. You shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed, and it shall be well with you. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Behold, thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord." Again, that's a beautiful promise to us as men, is that as we walk in His ways and we love His ways and we submit to His ways, there's fruitfulness to be had in our household. And these aren't prescriptive in the same way that Proverbs isn't prescriptive with train up a child in the way of the Lord and he won't depart from it. It's not prescriptive, but it is good practice. This is godly practice for us to do these things and to model that for our families. And so I think it's important that we, as parents, model this whole reality of, I love to walk in the ways of the Lord. And then there's times when I fail to walk in the ways of the Lord, but then I re-engage with walking in the ways of the Lord through repentance and through forgiveness. And there's something beautiful about that in the household, that if we can model that, and we've seen that with our kids to a degree. They're still, young and haven't lived a ton of life yet. But this idea that they know, hey, if I'm walking in His ways and then I get outside of His ways, how do I get back? Is it over and I just got to wander off now? Or is there a way back to walking in the ways of God? And so we've wanted to do that. And I think we've also wanted to make sure that we have space to fan into flame the gifts that have been in us. And when the kids were really little, and moms, that was everything in the world. These 3 boys depend wholeheartedly on her, and she needed space at times. And I needed to provide that space for her to get out, meet with friends, get prayed for, go to certain things, and be in certain environments of encounter to get built up. And then she's done that for me too, where we want to provide for each other's space to where do we go to be able to fan into flame the gift that God's put in us. And so we need that. And I don't know if you want to talk into the early stages of encouragement that's required for moms who need to get space.
Yeah, I think as a church planter too, that we didn't have a lot established when we first arrived in Tacoma, and so we felt really comfortable to piggyback onto what other churches were doing. So I was not an early adopter of MOPS. I think it's called MomCo now. But you just need to find some places where you're feeling encouraged. And even early on, we didn't really have a worship team or anything like that. And Bo and I would go to places to just be able to worship and to just be in the presence of God. And I think even hearing today about, I think it was Sophie who said, silence on purpose. It's so important. I think the refreshing really can't come from outside. We have to start cultivating a relationship with Jesus where he becomes our refuge and he becomes really all sufficient for us. And so I think, the young years are exhausting. And so, it is a team effort to be able to maintain some sort of light. So we definitely need each other for that.
Yeah, we had to lead ourselves in that, and we would go and visit other churches, and then when our oldest was probably in about fourth grade, I started to think about like he was, he'd be there with us on Sundays and all that, but how do we get him into places of encounter? Like how do we get him into places where like God's presence is thick and he's encountering Jesus and his life is changed? And so we started to think about like, where could we go for that? Because our church wasn't really doing much of that for, youth group and all that at that stage. And by God's grace, our youth group has grown, and it is a place of encounter. And we have kids go to New Day in the Northwest, and they meet with Jesus, and we're forever grateful for that. And so we've had to lead ourselves into that, like when there wasn't much of that going on in church planning. If any of you here are in church planning and it's Sundays aren't that exciting and it's just the way it is, that like where else can you go? Like how do you lead yourself? And I think one of the things like my kids will remember when they leave the house about their mom is the coffee table in our living room is always full of either the Bible, it's the Bible, and then other books that she's studying and reading, and like this idea that they will remember, like she fed herself, like she went to Jesus, and then they'll remember that the thing that flowed out of that was like our neighborhood. She shares her faith with people in our neighborhood. She tells people, who she is and prays for people, and so like they'll remember those aspects of that, like, and so like leading by example is really important. Like they need to see us worshiping, like for us, we stand in the front row on Sundays and we go for it because we're desperate and we need it. And our kids, hopefully, like that'll be a core memory of theirs, is seeing their parents worship and seeing their parents read the Bible and seeing their parents, talk to people and care for people and love people and share their faith with people. And so of course that's not why we're doing that, but it's a result of that is your kids see that, they get to see you live out your faith.
Yeah, I think it's important to like share your real life with your children as you evangelize and as you share your faith. And I think it's important to tell stories, and then they get to be a part of seeing God. God is wanting to save. He's seeking and saving the lost all the time. And, it's exciting for your kids to be on the front end of something. And we've been praying for our neighbor across the street for like 15 years, and the needle has moved hardly at all. But he owns a duplex, and the woman who moved in next door is a born-again believer who came to faith later in life, and you can't convince her otherwise. And I was like, I can't believe you're living right next to him, So it's exciting to share, tell your stories in your household, and they get to be included in what God is doing. And I think it envisions them to do the same, to be excited about what God could be doing.
Yeah, it's important. Tell them about the conference. Tell them about, the people that you met. Tell them about the churches. Tell them about the church plants that are going on in the United States, and tell them about what's going on in Mexico and Nepal, and get them caught up in kingdom things that they could get excited about things. We've been able to travel some around the world, and we come back telling them like, hey, God's on the move in the Islamic world. God, these people are having dreams about Jesus and coming to faith and just stirring their faith. Like just get them in places of where their faith is stirred up. And so if you're a church planning or your church doesn't have like a youth group or whatever it is, like be in prayer about that. Like where can my kids go to encounter? If it's not, Sundays, if whatever it might be, like we just need to battle for our kids in that way. And I think just by nature of the fact that we have to lead our households means that if you don't lead it, something bad's going to happen. And that means we're at war. And we're always at war. And so your household is a battleground. And our best tool for the war that we're in is prayer. And so, like, contending in prayer for your household, contending in prayer for your kids is so important. And to let them know, like, to tell them the whole story, that there is an enemy that wants to kill, steal, and destroy. There is the flesh that tempts us and leads us into sin. But there's a great Savior and a great King who carries a great big sword, and he wants to fight for us. And we want to pray for our kids in that regard and get them caught up in that. And so, yeah.
It's really good.
Praying over them?
Yeah. Also, like our 20-year-old. Do you want to talk a little bit about our 20-year-old? Just our goal.
Where are you?
I don't know. This one.
Oh, yeah. So different when they're older. I was talking to a friend of mine, and her kids are a little bit older than my oldest kid. And she was saying that the goal is that we want an invite to influence their lives. When they're little, we get to sort of set the stage, and we're talking to them about the things that's happening in their lives or that we want them to know about. And then they become adults, and you have less authority in their lives, and you want for them to invite you in. And I think that all gets set young, the groundwork when they're little. And it's a really beautiful thing. I mean, we're experiencing it now with our older son who is in a relationship, which is new for us, and talking through all of the things. And and him asking our opinion, which it feels like such a privilege. And it feels really sacred because it's of their own accord at that point. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's, again, you love that. You love that they want to come home, and but there are times when they don't want to come home, and there are times when they don't want your input. Mm-hmm. And I just want to encourage you to not settle for like, oh, that's just the way it goes. They kind of go off sometimes. And like, I would encourage you to maybe grab your 2 or 3 best prayer people and to commit to
Seriously.
it, to commit to the war. And we've had the privilege of having front row seats to, prodigals coming home. And it comes with a fight, it comes with prayer. And it comes with a battle for hearts and minds. And so I would just encourage you, like, if you're somebody who's like your kid, you're not sure where they are in their faith, or you're not sure even physically where they are, like, don't just settle for that's just the way it's going to be. Like, let's contend and fight for our children and the seeds that have been sown in them, for sure.
I think too, being in the church is so beautiful because our children get to know other adults who love Jesus. And when we went on sabbatical in the summer, we took a couple months, and our kids went to church together. And our friends started saying things like, I watched you grow up, but I don't really know you as a man. Can we go have coffee? And it was so important. It's so important that other adults engage your children and continue to be interested in them. There's some statistic that we don't know where it comes from.
And we don't know if it's true, but it sounds amazing.
Not true, but we're going to go with it. It's like if your kid knows 5 other adults
in the church,
they're more likely to stay engaged with their faith and stay involved in the life of the church. I think we've
80%
seen that.
80%? More likely. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln said that.
I mean, it feels familial and relational, so we'll go with that. We want to know other people's children as well. It's actually been a joy to get to watch our friends' children grow up and to be that person in their life as well.
I can't emphasize that enough, that you're connecting your kids to the kingdom. You're connecting them to the church and to other adults. And let me just also, in terms of leading your household, just talk a little bit real quick on finances. Jesus doesn't allow us to see money as neutral. You're either a slave to it, or you worship Jesus, or you're a slave to money. But you can't do both of those things. And I just wonder, like, where that battle is in your household, like with money, and what are you demonstrating to your household about how you use money and where you use money. And so I think it's important to model that as well, and to be open to the fact, hey, we give our first check of the month goes to the church. That's who we are. And we're as you know, we're in Lent right now, and our church is doing this thing where you lay down whatever you lay down, like buying coffee out or buying food out. And by the way, when you come to C26, Lent gets suspended. So, and
You can't not eat
yeah,
that.
it's grace. So, but you, like, whatever it is you're laying down, you use whatever you laid down and you give to an offering. And our offering goes to the homeless kids in our school district and then to our benevolence fund. And we talk through that with our kids, and they actually have to feel the pain of it a little bit. We're like, no, we're not going to do that.
Celebration Northwest, when we take up an offering, and we don't tell each other, we pray about it, and then we ask, what did you think? What did God say to you? And there's always someone who ups the ante.
Yeah, Alexis. $100,000.
I don't know. I just think these things don't have to be solemn. They can be really fun.
Yeah, so I think you're modeling, again, leading your household, you're modeling with money. And then money is also about our possessions. Like, are we stewarding our cars? Are we stewarding our house? And have they seen us live a generous life? Mm-hmm. Have they seen us, lend a car to somebody? Have they seen us house people in our home and make space for them, and have people around, and how are we leading them into a life of generosity? And I think more and more the culture is pressing towards what's mine is mine, and there's not a lot of hospitality going on in our culture these days. Maybe in your part of the world, but not really ours. And so I think it's important, again, to model gospel hospitality to people, and let your kids see that. And it hurts. Like your kids are like, really, tonight? I was just going to sit on the couch and I know, but we're hosting people. We host our community group a lot of times. Our community group has messed up our house, folks.
You can't not be precious about your things.
No.
It's true. I mean, I think this is where the hope of heaven really helps you. Seriously.
We're going to have that couch one day in heaven.
And John Norton knows we're not do-it-yourselfers. He helped us put a wall in our house. When stuff gets messed up, it usually doesn't get fixed at the Noonan house very quickly.
Not quickly.
Yeah.
No.
But I just think God has something for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be okay.
Store them up. Yeah. So I think you're modeling holistically when we talk about leading our household. We're leading in our marriages. We're leading with our children. We're leading with our stuff and modeling what that looks like, to be stewards of things and not owners of things.
I wonder how that's going in churches. We were really blown away when we went to Ian Ashby's church in England. It was out of control generous, unbelievably generous. People would, our parents came to visit, and they were going on vacation and let us stay in their homes, and people helped us with cars and really outrageous acts of generosity. And I wonder how we do with that in our country and in our churches. It'd be really interesting. I know it's happening in our community group, so we don't always know. There's a lot of acts of generosity happening as people care for one another, but it would be great to be a church marked by that.
Yeah. When we were in England, we didn't have any money, and this guy in the church was sliding money under our door, and we didn't know who it was, but it was basically weekly, I think. I don't know, but it was
£200.
It was so generous. And one night we came home late and we saw him doing it. And we were like, I got you. And then he stopped doing it. So
No, he didn't.
Just let him give secretly. No, he kept giving. But there's just the beauty of the church, isn't it? That maybe you all have your own stories of that, where just people have come as small as a meal when you're sick or whatever your family needs. And such an important thing for our kids to see, that we've not relied on our money. We've relied on Jesus, and we've not relied on our stuff. We've relied on Jesus, and so it's important for them to see that. Anything else you want to open up for?
Yeah.
Some Q&A. Carl's going to be our runner. He's fast. He's quick.
Yeah, that last bit right there about your children.
Okay, so if you have a question, I want to
Don't be shy. We got
take the
time.
mic to you. Oh, somebody back there first.
What?
And because we want to get it on the,
What
whatever
just
it's called
happened?
now, recording. Who raised their hand back here?
Oh,
Hello.
hi. We know you.
So I was raised in like a really legalistic household where it was like, you need to stand and worship, you need to sing and worship, you
Yeah.
need to do these things.
Yeah.
And raising like our boys especially, you might not see that as much. And I think they're like part of the tension, I think, is like their faith becoming their own too. And so how do you kind of navigate that part of it? Does that make sense? Kind of.
Navigate what part? That they
Just
their
like
faith-
seeing them actually step out in like their faith and things like that, but you're trying to encourage them, but you're like, get off your phone and worship. And there's just like a lot of these
Yeah.
things happening all the time.
Well, I mean, I think you're still their parents.
Yes.
And so maybe there are some standards that we hold to, you know, in service or during worship. And I think you're right to talk about that and bring correction in that. I think it's figuring out what's worth, like really fighting over. Like if our son decided that he was going to sit down and worship, or he was wearing certain clothes to church, like I don't care, and like those things are so minute. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have?
I think my question would be like, where's the line between you're embarrassing us and you're doing the wrong thing? Like, and I think like we went to multi gatherings a while back, and we just agreed that our kids weren't going to go to both. Like we were going to find ways for them to be at one, and so some of them serve at one, and depending on the Sunday. But we didn't want them to feel like church was like a burden. So we wanted them to be able to come and worship at one. And so just finding way, like what is an embarrassment to me, and is that like my pride on the line, or is their heart on the line? Trying to find that line. And I grew up in that kind of legalism environment too. And so I want to model it. Like I'm not going to ask them to do something I'm not willing to do. So I want to be in the front row. I want to be worshiping. I want to be going for it and model that for them. And then if they're like checked out, like there's probably a reason, like they're exhausted, they're tired, whatever it might be. It's just another opportunity to ask questions around those things. But I think for me, I probably grew up in a family. I'm glad this is probably being recorded. Great. I don't think my parents know how to use the internet, so that's good. Like I think there was a lot of family pride more than discipleship was on the line, and so I think you have to differentiate there. Like, where are your kids' hearts? Rather than were they standing and did they have ripped sweatpants on? Like where are we in that area?
You have a follow up to that?
Whoa.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah.
Have your kids experienced any pressure on themselves, like that, with you guys being in leadership, that they needed to be a certain way? Or
We have asked them this question.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up in a Christian household or going to church at all. And it's really funny because during COVID, 2 of our kids started going to Christian school, and they didn't know what a PK was until they went there. So I think
What a PK is?
Pastor's kid.
Yeah,
or
preacher's kid if you're from the South.
Yeah.
But pastor's kid.
Yeah.
And that's an ugly term, by the way. Like they're just our kids.
Yeah.
They're not an accountant's kid. They're not they're just our kids.
Yeah. I think we had to fight that culturally early on in the church. I remember people saying things about our kids early on, and I just thought, that's really not the gospel. They are human beings who are going to find their way to Jesus, and they're going to do it clumsily, and they're going to make mistakes just like everyone else. It's such a weird thing to believe that because your mom or dad has a position of authority or speaks publicly, that they would somehow be not human. They would walk it differently than someone else. And so We have corrected
Yep.
our friends before, and yeah.
And we've also tried to promote, like we've taken our kids to like Celebration California, and we're like, we get to do this because Dad's a pastor, and then we do other things. We're like, we get to do this because this is our role in the church. So we try to make it more positive. I read a book a few years back by one of John Piper's kids called The Pastor's Kid. Spoiler alert, it's about being a pastor's kid. And it didn't really apply to like our context. You can read it and apply it to yours, but I didn't really feel like there was a lot of connecting dots. The one thing I would say, if you're somebody who preaches or teaches or publicly speaks, the thing I learned in that book is there was a story about John Piper referencing his son Barnabas and this story that had happened to him when he was a kid. And everywhere Barnabas went, people would be like, "Oh, you're the kid who had his bike stolen." Yeah. And he was like, "You don't know me. Like, you think you know me, but you don't know me." And that just was like, because your kids are such easy sermon illustrations. Like every Sunday, you're like, "All right, here we go again." And I've just learned to not do that. Or if I do mention my kids, I don't name the kid. I'll say like one of my kids, but just to be careful with that because nobody else's kids. I'm not using other kids in my sermon illustration. And so just to be careful, like not to unintentionally put them in a position you don't want them to be in, where they feel unknown. But everybody knows about them, but nobody knows them.
Yeah. And I think, Alicia, that we've like asked them, how do they feel? We've asked them, do they feel set apart or different? And because our kids are wired differently, but I think it's just worth asking. And I think that because we are elder-led and there's humility happening in the church, I think we don't have a culture where, it's like the one man and people are overly honoring and things like that. So I think that we sort of live, we sort of like live a normal life. And I think that they kind of do too and benefit from that. Does that help?
Yeah. Your turn.
At the beginning, you guys mentioned like the vision for your family. Yeah. What are some practical ways, or what does that look like? Because I'm more of a creative, whereas he's, I guess, a doer.
Yeah.
And like communication can cross in a weird way there. So how do you? What does that look like? I guess practically.
It's great that you have those differences because vision needs to be cast in a lot of different ways, and you've got to know the vision and logically understand it, but you've got to feel the vision too. And so I think it's a good combination that you bring up. And I just think we talked about it a lot. Like family meetings when the kids were little were really fun.
For example, we're the Noonans and we love people.
Yeah.
And we learned that from people in New Hampshire, in the churches, the New Frontiers churches in New Hampshire, that some parents were saying, like, we're the so-and-sos, and we love people. And so there's, like, this mantra.
Yeah. So I think you just talk about it a lot. And, again, in that Deuteronomy 6 sense that you talk about it, well, that's not who we are as a family. Like in the car ride, when something comes up, well, that's not who we are as a family. We're this. And so just kind of drawing those contrasts. I remember when our second born came along, and and I talked to the firstborn. I said, "Hey, you have a little brother now. You have to protect your brother. Like you're his big brother," and just coaching him on things like that. And one day in like a Sunday school class, our middle son was a little chubster, and so he was just sitting there. And oftentimes you're like, "I don't think he can move if he wanted to," and some kid just like ran over him, just like flattened him.
Over. Yeah.
And our oldest just went across the room and flattened that kid. And I was like, he's okay, right? But you want to like building in again that vision and that family value. Like we called them the Noonan boys. The Noonan boys do this. The Noonan boys do that. They don't do that. And so you just speak into it in a lot of different ways and a lot of different times. to cheer each other on and be supportive of each other. Again, because then you have these cultural lies about sibling rivalries and sibling fighting, and you just settle for it. You're like, that's just the way it goes. But I think we can contend for something better than that.
Practically, what did discipline look like for you guys? When did y'all know we're showing grace here? We're not here. Yep.
I'm trying to rack my brain. There were 3 D's that they got disciplined for: disobedience, danger, and destruction. So, just willful disobedience, like, hey, come here, and they went the other way. Destruction, quit breaking stuff in my house. Yeah. And what was the third? I already forgot it. Danger. Yeah, don't cross the street. Don't you need to stop and wait for me here. And so each age gets a little bit different in the discipline. So like super controversial, spanking, non-spanking, all those things, and you have to have faith for what you're doing there. And if you are someone who's going to spank, you need to do so under control and not out of anger, with clear communication. There's lots of good resources.
And reconciliation.
And reconciliation at the end, you ask, you say, what did you do wrong? They state it, and they say, I'm sorry. You say, I forgive you. I think grace is kind of the culture that all that is happening in. So it's not like grace is like, oh, I murdered someone. Oh, don't worry about it. Like, we're going to let you go. It's actually more like, how do I reconcile with this person and talk through it with them? And we would, we've done a few things like on hard days where like all the kids were just a mess all day long. You'd put them to bed, and then it didn't happen a lot, but we'd heard someone do this, and so we thought it'd be really fun. They were in their pajamas in bed, and we would just kick in their door and be like, let's go, we're all going for ice cream, like at 8:30 at night, like get in the car and just, again, try to create like, this is a loving household. It isn't just about discipline and obedience. And so
I would say we could use our oldest as an example. He was getting out of the crib. I mean, and looking at us in the face and knowing that he should be in there. And so it was early for him, and we did spank. And so he's such a great 20-year-old. And I really think that if we had just let him run loose, we would be miserable and he would be miserable. I think that God gives us loving, boundaries. And we had to learn. I mean, the boys were telling a story recently that I had one in the bathroom having a spanking, and the other 2 were looking in to see if they were next. And sometimes the moms are home because you want to handle it immediately because they have short-term memory. And so you don't like have something happen and then wait for dad to come home at 5. It's not appropriate. And so I came from a very angry household. And so there were some times that I couldn't actually spank them because I was too angry. And we just let that one go that day.
Try again tomorrow.
Yeah, try again tomorrow. But depending on your child, our second child was kind of learned from the first child. And we gave them as many spanks as their age. So you were 2, you get 2 spanks. And then we would reconcile with them and say, first we would say, do you know why you're getting spanked? They would have to tell us why. And so they understood why. And then we would do the spank, and then we would say, we love you, we forgive you. And then we would go about our time. And so I don't know if that's practical enough. Okay.
Our oldest still doesn't get out of bed. He calls us from college. Can I get out of bed now?
You may have already answered this a little bit, but any advice for parents who the kids just kind of bulldoze mom when dad's away, and then when dad comes home, they're like,
yeah.
Any advice to moms there?
How old are they? 7, 5, and 2.5. I think our children really respect what Bo says and does while they're there. And so I think he's modeling how to treat me and what is appropriate and not appropriate in the moment that it's happening. And so sometimes when our kids would disrespect us while he was there, they would really know about it. He's a very easygoing person. And so you would directly address it.
Yeah, and it happens. Like it would definitely happen in our household. I remember once going on a trip down to a church in Southern California, and like just all hell broke loose in our house. Like it was just nuts.
And you were gone.
And I was gone.
I was home with them.
And I think so. I would just have really kind of firm and clear talks with them. Like, I'm going away, and when I come home, I expect that I'll hear from Mom that you were obedient, that you were helpful, to your siblings, and just be real clear with them. And so she had to deal with it in the moment, but then I could ask them afterwards, like, hey, remember when Dad said, how did that go for you? Did you do what you were supposed to do? But I mean, there is just something that's going to happen, like in that regard. But I think as dads in the house, we just kind of step in and say, like, I told you, this is what my expectation is. It's clear. So when I come home, I expect to hear good things.
Yeah, and I think consequence, and depending on how you choose to do that, it may be that they're little enough that you're still training them with the rod of correction, and they may be older, and so you come up with something that's really consequential. And they know that when you come back to the house. So he was on a trip, but maybe for a little while, it's a daily practice where you're reminding them before you leave the house what's expected when you come home. And I think and pray. I mean, I think we need to pray. Sometimes when our house is really messed up and you can feel it in the air, we just need to stop and pray. Ask God to intervene.
I think it's good to think about positive consequences rather than like, if I come home and you guys were a mess today, I'm going to take away whatever. But to think like, if I come home and Mom says, then, hey, we're going to get ice cream or do something positive. Like we'll be able to do this. And so just thinking about rewarding them as well as disciplining them.
I see you over there.
Your daughter-in-law.
Yeah, Danielle.
Your daughter.
Hi.
I have a question about having a really hard father-in-law. No, I'm just kidding.
Girl.
Just kidding. I love you, Dad. He's my father-in-law. So I was thinking about their question with being a team. Dave and I did that. So sometimes the kids did need like an immediate consequence when they were young. So Mom had to immediately give the consequence, but then Dad would give a second consequence of like, hey, did you obey Mom today? And Dad would give a second consequence to show that we were a team.
On a team, yeah.
Yes. How do you do that with teenagers? Sometimes we'll have like a disagreement on how to deal with it right in the middle.
Yeah.
And also, how do you survive the teenage years?
I think it's really good for, this might be controversial, but I think it's good for kids to see arguments and then they're resolved. And that you love each other. I never really saw an argument resolved growing up in my household.
Between your parents.
Between my parents.
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, there's something beautiful about that, where they can see you reconciling to one another and loving each other. Surviving the teenage years is with like a ton of humor. I just think you have to laugh at a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think continuing to like extend like a heartstring to your kids, even when they really don't want to be around you, or they insult you, or all of these things. Like, we're the adults, so we have to try to maintain that line of communication and a heartstring to them. And I think praying with your friends, because like really trusted friends, we need Jesus. It's the hardest thing to do because there's so much at stake and we're so invested. We need each other to get through it, to enjoy it. What about that first part of the question? Did we answer
I think
that?
okay, so let me give you a situation.
Yeah.
Say you two are both dealing with a teenage situation and Alexis says something that you're like, I don't know if that's actually what we want to address right now.
That's never happened.
Maybe the other way around then. How do you guys stay a team in that moment of like, do you put a pin in it right then? Or do you say, hey, we should go to I just don't. Sometimes I feel like if the teenager gets like a whiff that you're not on the same team, they're going to like, oh, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's hard to be 12, 15, 13.
Yeah.
And I always tell them that, hey, by the way, I would never go back to being your age. I know it's
know.
tough to be a kid and
It
a
is.
teenager even more.
Yeah.
But I just wondered, we've had a couple situations where I'm like, how do we deal with this when we're not on the same page on how to deal with it?
Yeah.
Do you put a pause on it? Do you still support each other and then say afterwards, like, hey, actually, we made a mistake there. I think we might do that different than we said.
Yeah.
Just curious.
I think that.
Yeah.
We made a mistake there.
Yeah.
We actually don't know what we think right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
I mean, it is real life. They're your real life kids. You're their real life parents.
Yeah.
You've never done it before. I mean, you make a lot of mistakes with the first one, especially. I mean, those poor first ones.
Yeah. I
kid.
I would say like you have the right to hit that pause button and say like, hey, Mom and I need to talk this over. We're going to figure it out.
I tend to not, like, if he's going off crazy, I tend to not just even correct it in the moment. They're not going to be really that bothered by it. Most of the stuff is good that's happening. You know, we can correct that.
I think I'm just thinking about this right now, and I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I think sometimes with marriage and parenting, like we can be so entitled, and we can feel so entitled that our marriage should be this good, and if it's not this good, like we deserve this. And I think same with parenting. Like you can feel so entitled, like that the kids should be so perfect. And it's just not the narrative of the Christian faith that everything would be perfect this side of eternity. And so I think you just have to be gracious to each other when things aren't going well. And that's why it's important to not feel entitled, but to work through things. Your marriage isn't supposed to be perfect where you never fight. Your marriage is this drama of the gospel that Jesus laid down his life for the church, and the church loves and submits to Jesus. And so that's what's at play here, rather than like, I deserve so much better and I deserve this. And I think like for us, our early days of marriage were pretty easy for us. Kids got me. Like kids pushed on every button in me that I thought, I'm not selfish. And they found everything in me to point out the fact that I'm selfish. And overall, I'm grateful because God is using that and working through them and using them. And so I think it's important that we just don't feel entitled when it comes to these things. Leading a household is hard. It is war. It is a battle, and it needs prayer, and it needs intentionality, and you need vision. And so I want to encourage you all. It's worth doing, even when no one around you is doing it, and they're just kind of like, I don't know, our household just flows with the way everything's going. Like to fight for it and to go for something better and contend for it. And yeah.
I was just thinking for Daniela, though, too, that if it seems to be like a weird sticking point or a reoccurring thing, then you just get with David and, we figure this out together. This just seems to be a weird sticking point, and let's work this out so we don't look crazy in front of the kids.
Yeah. Some of the worship team are sneaking in. What time are we done? Are you guys supposed to be practicing?
We have 12 minutes.
Oh, we have that 12 minutes.
Okay.
So we have until 3:30? Oh, great.
Thank you.
Keep them coming.
I was just thinking, as our boys, our oldest now are teenagers, how do you, what would you suggest to help practice like gratitude, hearts of gratitude and thankfulness? Like as they're growing, they have some more freedoms and more privileges, but like wanting to not just take everything away, but like it seems like as that grows, the entitlement grows, and there's not a huge amount of like, oh, this is actually a gift that I'm getting this. So how would you like encourage them seeing that?
It's hard. We're in that fight. Our youngest goes to a Christian school, and a lot of his friends are like way wealthier than we are. And they have a lot more stuff and a lot more experiences that they get to engage in that we're just like, hey, we're not doing that. And so it is hard for them to get exposed to that and then feel like, oh, is there something wrong with my family or whatever? So I think it's just important, again, to model it. Like we try to model, like I'm grateful for this and I have gratitude for that. But I think, again, having a kingdom vision is like, we use our money differently, and we use our experiences differently. Like we've we've used a lot of money to go to church things rather than, vacations, and that might not be the healthiest, but that's just the way we've modeled that for our kids. And so I think it is practicing like gratitude. Where are you thankful? And you can model that, but then also, this is what we do this is who we are as a family. This is how we're using our money. And our kids got cell phones way later than the rest of their friends. They don't, they don't have new cars, and our kid at home right now doesn't have a car at all. Like, it just, just things like that where you're like, it's just different. Like, my friend got a car when he was 14. I was like, he didn't have a driver's license. Oh, well, he likes that car, so they bought it. Like, that's dumb. So that's what's really at play here. Your friends are dumb.
Is it small things, John? Is it like...
Yeah, I was thinking even too, not even just financially, but more like new freedoms. So like as they're like, hey, so our oldest actually does have a phone, but then the next one wants to treat the home phone like it's his. And it's like, no. Like as they get new freedoms, rather than like appreciating that, it's like, oh, it's not enough. I need more. Like, just more ungrateful about everything.
Yeah. I think some of it is just the natural like maturation process. They're going to be funky at certain stages. I mean, I just think about... They smell. Yeah. Well, I think too, I start thinking through like what's happening with them physiologically. That's crazy that they can even do the kind of like go to school and stuff with the amount of stuff pumping through their bodies, and think straight at all. And so I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes you just take an L in certain categories for a little while. You know what I'm saying? And like pray. I'm serious. Like, I mean, I know you guys. I know that you're gracious and you have hearts of gratitude. It's not like you're not modeling it. Sometimes it just takes a little while for them to like catch on. So
you can't wait. I mean, you just can't wait till they're like, oh, that's what you were talking about, but it may never happen. But nor are we entitled to it happening. But you just want to model for them those things and hold the line on certain things.
Yeah.
And try to explain it best you can. Like, this is why we're holding the line on this. I mean, the cell phone thing was a huge thing in our house. And I saw this advertisement for these like super lame phones that couldn't do anything other than like call it was something like that. And so I told my oldest, I was like, hey, we give you this. And he goes, I'd rather not have that. I can't explain that one to my friends. So, it's things like that you're just swimming against the culture. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm thinking about our lives. I mean, we engage in the life of the church. There's so many places where they're seeing it, right? And so, I mean, obviously we want the household to be a primary place, but I also think they're being exposed to it in other ways. Even being like at a Celebration Northwest where people are like giving and you see like all of this generosity on display and acts of service within the church. I do think they get it. They will get it, but...
Yeah, actually... there's probably some more questions. I think we got a substitute for Carl here. So, while you're finding the next question, I recently we had our men's weekend, and we get to bring high schoolers and up, so freshmen and up. And so my youngest was the first year he got to go to man camp. We call it man camp, and he, one of his youth leaders, like shared a testimony about battling pornography and breaking through and getting freedom in it and wanting to help others lead in it. And I'm just thinking, like, this is the best place in the world for my 14-year-old to be right now. Like, to see, one, it is a real battle, and it's not to be hidden in shame, and two, there's a way out of it. And not just mom and dad saying, don't use your cell phone like that, but, like, actually to see grown men in the church talk about their battle as well. So it's important to expose them to that.
Hi. I have 4 boys, and they're within 4 years of each other. So there's a ton of, like, bickering. And my husband and I, especially with 2 of our sons, when they get started, it can like sink us in like 5 minutes, and like the whole tone of the conversation has changed. So what did you guys do with like cultivating relationships within your boys? And like when you can see the ship going down, like was there any like helpful like reset that you guys did, or with bickering, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's so hard. I think the the big picture thing we did was try to identify, like, root them in an identity that you're the Noonan boys, like the three of you, you're brothers. That's a special thing. That's more important than your friendships. It's more important than your classmates and your teammates. Like, you're in this together. And so we tried to root them in that to try to be cheerleaders for each other. But of course, they still, scrap and fight and all that. And de-escalation, is that part of what, like, how to de-escalate a situation? Do you, you just got to get in there with them.
I can't say
Start
that,
swinging.
that I was really successful with this.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, I think we did do some separation and trying to split them up.
Yeah, I mean, there might be people who have more wisdom on this.
Yeah, there might be. Carl, you got anything?
You got anything, Carl?
I think the thing, all I can really say is
I
just try.
actually encouraged one of my boys to hit the other one because he kept bothering him.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked him.
I do think
It'll stop it. That's
I
for
do
sure.
think that praying, sometimes there's just like a spirit of like dissension in the household. I do think that it needs to be brought to prayer. Seriously. There were just some days where I was like, no, this feels like the enemy. This is not the way the house is supposed to feel. And I think you become like more and more aware that he's not creative. He just knows like to do that same thing. Then you kind of get quick at identifying it and praying through it. We did separate people. I don't know. I really do think there might be some people with more wisdom than we are having right now, but there was something about them just growing up that they started to appreciate each other differently. I think there are stages that our kids are so different. They're wired differently. Some are sensitive. The other thinks they're being funny, but it actually feels like bullying. Yeah. There's so many things going on, and I don't want to say like you just have to like sit through it and white knuckle it. I think there's probably a better way, but I think there is a piece of that is kind of part of them growing up together.
Yeah, I think it's worth fighting for and contending for and finding ways to identify, get them rooted in an identity. But because if they don't, I grew up around my best friend in high school. His brother used to beat the living life out of him, and so like the joke. I'm not trying to put fear in you, but when you're little and you wrestle, it's like, oh, no one's really going to get hurt, and then all of a sudden they're in high school and they're throwing each other through drywall and stuff, and so. I think it's worth contending for and finding ways to create peace and talk about them as brothers, and we love each other.
Yeah. What are the ages again?
14. Oh, you put me on the spot here.
No, that's okay.
I have 6 kids, so it's like keeping track of all of them.
Yeah.
14, 12, 11, and 10.
Okay, they're bigger. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I would share is really important as parents as we realize this may just be a small window.
Right.
This isn't going to be like this forever.
Right.
So like 2 of our grandkids, when they were younger, it's like, are they going to kill each other?
Yeah.
And now it's like they're best friends.
Right.
And so it is. I think we've got to be doing it for the long haul.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, that's good to have the long view. Yeah. I think too. Praying with your husband and coming to a place where, they're old enough to really understand what you're saying. So that you can have a sit down kind of conversation and say like, this is just like our house this makes it miserable and we want something different. And so like to have that kind of conversation once you've decided and like the good and bad consequences, like they're old enough to really know this is like, look at mom's face. This is not okay. Right? I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you over here, Alexis.
Hi.
Just as an 18-year-old, like being in your house multiple times a week for a year, I learned a lot from you guys, and I'm excited to learn how to parent Rome, just from what I learned from you guys. So thank you for that. But a question for you, Bo. How did you prioritize your wife and your family as you gave your life to the church? Because the church is always going to ask for more time and stuff. Mm-hmm. How did you say no to all that to make sure that your wife and your kids got your first and your best with your time?
Yeah, right when we got married, and I think even in premarital, we were told there's nothing you can do in the church that's more important than your marriage. And that has really stuck with us, and that like prioritizing marriage. The church, and when Jesus says, this is going to sound terrible, but when Jesus says the poor will always be with you, like the church will always be with you. There's great job security in leading in the church. There's endless amounts of things to do. And so it's always there. And you have to find your limits and your boundaries to say hey, I'm coming home at night and my phone is off. Or for us, one of the practices that's been so life-giving to our marriage is Mondays for me are totally off. And so it takes moving heaven and earth to get me to answer a phone call or do something on a Monday. And that's not just off me in the backyard by myself. It's the two of us get to do things together that day and spend time together. So people do date nights and all those sorts of things. And for us, we just know that if I'm running hard on Sunday, and even if I've got all the gatherings on Sunday plus a Sunday night meeting, I know Monday's coming, and she knows Monday's coming. And so if she's got stuff she's needs to talk to me about, she knows Monday's coming. And so we've set those moments up so that she knows and I know that's coming. We can get there. And I think for my kids, I've left work. I mean, I don't know what work hours are for church people, but I've gone to games and I've done all the stuff, after school stuff, and it's afforded me. In some ways, leading a church will stretch you in terms of working ridiculous amounts of hours, and in other ways, there's flexibility to be able to go to your kids' award ceremony at school or support them in their sports or whatever it might be. And for me, I was going to say this is, perhaps our greatest impact isn't the disciples that we're making in the church, but perhaps the greatest impact we'll ever have on this earth are the disciples we're making in our household, because you have way more impact and influence on the ones in your household than you would outside. And so it's just setting up those boundaries and making sure you prioritize them. And then listening
more later.
And listening to her when she says, I feel hey, I haven't seen you. Where are you? What's going on? I need to listen.
Yeah,
and be
because I
accountable.
think we all have different thresholds. And so finding out what's okay with your wife, And we always had that Monday.
Yeah. I think everybody has different capacities, so it's hard to be overly prescriptive on that.
Yeah.
And so you have to know your capacity, but more importantly, you need to know your wife's capacity. And then it's not let's meet in the middle. No, it's her capacity.
John and Linda Lamferman did a good job of this, because also the church can become all that you talk about, and that's not good. And so you have to find other stuff. You have to find other things that you enjoy together that, so you're not bringing that into your time alone all the time. That makes sense. Yeah.
Let's thank Bo and Alexis.
Thank you.
Just as this has been good for you to have these conversations, I would encourage you to build friendships where you have these kind of conversations. You're not doing it alone. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you that you've called us to this, that we are to instruct our children in the ways of the Lord, and that's a real privilege to do that. Help us to follow you and to build disciples in our children, that they might become mature men and women who model your kingdom. And we just thank you for Bo and Alexis and their testimony. And we ask these things in your name. Amen.